Good morning. It is December 23rd. Just got the latest software update, which would be Tesla FSD 13.2.2, which included the Christmas update, various upgrades, such as Sirius XM radio, which I haven't used yet, but I certainly use on my phone, and some other miscellaneous updates. The release notes didn't show anything particularly new from the previous version so far as the FSD is concerned, but it's daytime, the weather's not bad, so let's see if we can clean the nasty window from a long drive yesterday from South Carolina, and then we will go ahead and try and navigate home with the FSD, which will give us an opportunity to go through one of the traffic control barricades at the entrance to the neighborhood. It did actually seem to recognize the barricade the last time I went through on FSD a day or two ago. So we'll see if that was a fluke or not, because it certainly had ignored these barricades in every previous version that I tested. Recording with the Insta360 camera in single camera mode, mounted on a selfie stick wedged between the driver's seat and the center console. It's 8:46 in the morning, so the sun's still fairly low, a lot of glare. On a long drive yesterday, I noticed there were some problems on the previous version with the attention recognition. I was wearing sunglasses, but normally that had not been a problem, but I had several steering wheel nags, even though I was looking straight ahead on the interstate yesterday. Hopefully that was just a glitch that won't be repeated today. But I did use the FSD extensively on a 500-mile drive yesterday. Only had a couple of disengagements, mostly due to navigation errors, where I would take the wrong exit ramp. But these were areas that humans probably take the wrong exit ramp all the time, since it's not always that clear on the GPS which one you should be taking. So can't really fault the FSD for that. So we're only about 7 miles to my neighborhood, 6 miles to the neighborhood, I guess. So we'll stop the video once we get through the security gate and the barricade in front of the gate. Since I was traveling, I used several superchargers and let the new version of the software try to park me at the supercharger. I had 1 success and 4 failures. Though the failures, it did get me to the supercharger in general, though interestingly at one of the supercharger sites, it was a Wawa, the car pulled me right up to the gas pump and stopped, which I thought was kind of interesting, since the chargers were behind the Wawa and not anywhere near the gas pumps, but just interesting that it pulled up to a gas pump. 2 of the other failures, it just sort of wandered around the parking lot, never attempting to park. And one of the failures, it just missed the parking space. It got close to a supercharger, but the stripe separating the 2 parking spaces was directly under the car. So that piece of the software is pretty rough compared to the normal auto park, which I think is very well refined and almost perfect. So it's almost like the crew working on the FSD auto parking wasn't talking to the other crew and was starting from scratch and trying to design that piece of the software. It might be nicer if they just let the driver choose which space to take, so as to follow typical etiquette at supercharger sites. So yes, you can play with that feature, but I certainly would not call it reliable at this point. It is a welcome addition in general to have destination parking, and they say they're going to have setups for driveways and garages as well. I'm not sure if that's already in the software now or not. But none of the disengagements I had this weekend were serious safety-related disengagements. There were more navigation problems or getting trapped in a wrong turn lane from which the FSD couldn't really escape, in large part due to heavy traffic. Another thing I've noticed a few times, I'm not sure this is really an FSD problem, but more of a navigation problem, is there will be heavy traffic. You'll be driving along the interstate and the car will decide to take you to a detour to go around slow traffic on the interstate, taking you off the interstate, sometime for several miles. This has almost never worked out because invariably lots of other cars, GPSs, are doing the same thing. And what usually ends up happening is you wind up with worse traffic off the interstate than you would have had you just stick to the original route. Sometimes this adds another 15-20 minutes to the trip. I'm not sure what could be done to improve this. Maybe changing the threshold from my 5 minutes to 10 minutes as to when it should try to take an alternative route. But on one of these detours near Daytona, Florida, the car found itself trapped in a no man's lane between the right turn lane and the straight lane. This was one of those semi lanes that had a lot of crosshatches, meaning no car should be here. The car was inadvertently in the right turn lane and tried to move into that no man's lane to try to get back into the straight traffic. But traffic was backed up for like half a mile in both lanes and it could no longer leave ever. So I had to disengage, make a right turn, then make a U-turn to come back to go straight on my way. So here's an example here. We're in a left turn lane now with lots of traffic on the right. We're pulling right up to the car in front of us. We're not really trying to make a left turn. We're trying to go straight here. So we've got to get over to that right lane to be able to continue on our way. So the car just sort of figured that out and put the turn signal on. But there's still lots of traffic coming up behind us to the right, as you can see on the camera down here maybe. Maybe you can't. I'll lower that a little bit. Put that up where you can see it. So had we just stayed to the right, we'd been better off, but we pulled up so close to the car in front of us that while we started creeping up, we can't get past that guy's trailer until he pulls up some more when the light changes. So I'm not sure why it decided to be in this left turn lane, except that maybe you couldn't tell it was a left turn lane at first. So now we managed to get out back into the main traffic lane. So I've seen that happen a few times. It's a little bit of a nuisance. It'd be nice if the map data was good enough that it could anticipate that a little better. It had just made the lane change into that left turn lane, again for reasons unknown, and then had to wait a while to correct the error, thanks to traffic. Now the two entrances into the neighborhood, it normally takes the first entrance, which also has a barricade and a security gate. But right now it looks like it's navigating us to the second one. I think sometimes it gets the idea that first entrance is permanently closed, because navigating out of the neighborhood, it will sometimes try to avoid that gate. Now, if you've driven with FSD, you know that you can put on the turn signal and it will command the car to make a lane change. But there's no mechanism to command a turn that I'm aware of. Or otherwise, without disengaging, I could command it to make a turn into this first entrance to the neighborhood. But I don't think there's really a way to do that. So there is a fire truck up ahead and a police car up ahead blocking the lane that we're in. These don't show up on our display yet, but I think the car has sort of figured out now that we need to change lanes, so it's put on the turn signal and easing over to the right. So it's going to try to merge in here. Car behind is giving us a little space. So I saw it slightly before the car, but of course my head's farther to the left than those center cameras. So at least in Central Florida, maybe elsewhere, anytime you call an ambulance, you get a fire truck too. Just so they can give the firemen something to do so they don't get deep vein thrombosis, I think. And also to get a couple other hands to help with scene control and perhaps with transporting bigger patients or multiple patients. Or if things really go bad, to have some extra hands in case there's more of a medical emergency, such as need for CPR. Back in the day when I did EMS, the heavy cases you tended to call for backup, which would be another ambulance unit. But as you may know, firemen spend 99% of their time sitting around and not on calls. So it does make some sense to get them out of the chair in support of the EMS calls. So it's going to take us into the main entrance to the neighborhood, which is the second entrance as you come from the south. There are two entry lanes, one with guards and one with just the gate and the barricade for residents. So sometimes I have to indicate a lane change to keep it over to the right to go through the residence lane. So it always seems to take this left lane, which would take us to where the guard shack is. So I'll do a right turn signal here to get it to move over to the right lane. Got my foot touching the brake from past experience here. So let's see what happens. The barricade is closed. And in this case, the gate, which is well beyond the barricade, is open. So there's no gate close to the barricade here. At the other entrance, the gate is right behind the barricade. So we went slow enough. So it acted like it saw the obstruction. It went over the speed bump, slowed down a little bit for that, and it slowed down some for the barricade. The barricade opened and we passed through. So that's twice in a row now between the previous version and the current version, 13.2.2 now. And 13.2.1 also managed that gate correctly. So that's some progress. So I'll wrap it up from here. I'll try to record the other gate when I get the opportunity.